spin on it, but can't reach that with the mask. din. Tirgitak din din. Dinak din. Tatak din na din. Tatak din din na din. Show you this drum a little bit later. I have to tune it up in a certain way.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Kalyan Pathak, and today my program is Yatra, which means literally a journey or a sort of like a pilgrimage, but I like to think of it more like a journey from one destination to another. The reason I say yatra or journey is because everything is right now within 10 feet of me, but early on Jack had asked me, how much area of Indian drums, like where are they from? So because of they come from so many places in India, we'll look at them in a geographical sense where they come from, and then you'll see that we're covering a lot of North India. So if you look at India's map, it's sort of like longer country this way than wider. So musically, India is divided very, very generally speaking, because this, I can be in trouble for saying this, but very roughly, you can say North Indian music and South Indian music, okay? Now, just because I said North and South, already people will say, well, there is West Indian music and East Indian music. Yes, there is. And yes, there is a lot of differences in all four of them. But if you think about longer country, the best classification in the beginning, without too many musicological details, North Indian and South Indian. So right now, everything I have here, except for these two drums, we'll put them a little bit on the side. That's South India. We have North Indian drumming world right here. Very simple reason for bringing North Indian drums here and not 10 other South Indian drums. I'm from North India. I'm from Midwest, actually. And so my expertise, or my first love for drumming, began with all these North Indian drums. So even though I do play a little bit South Indian mridangam, I also know the South Indian drumming tradition very well by studying it by ears and by speaking the rhythms and studying mathematics of South Indian rhythms. As far as what I do in Indian music, I bring North Indian drums. And so I started so with that in mind, I'll trace my performance back a little bit, and then each individually with each drum will get in depth about each drum. Cool? Yeah. So this first drum that I started out with is called Dholak, D-H-O-L-A-K, Dholak. And Dholak was my first drum when I was growing up. I was 3 or 4 years old, between 3 and 4. And my dad used to play this drum and accompany himself singing in the community. My dad and mom were very, very good singers, especially my dad. He was a very phenomenal singer and always in demand. But within the context of the 50s and 60s India, I wasn't, of course, there at that time, but when he was young, in the 50s and 60s in India, he was in demand, but he was not a professional in the sense that he never made one rupee or $1 from singing for people. It was a community thing that he would do. He was in demand because people's weddings or parties and like, oh, you gotta come over and sing. No, come on, how can we have a party without you singing for an hour? So in that way, I think his level of musicianship and proficiency was like a professional, but in that 50s and 60s India, he was a psychologist and a social worker and a professor in a college. That's how he made his money. So that was, for me, I used to see my dad sing all the time with his drum, so one day when he was not home, I went, and we had a very small house with just front room and a kitchen, that's it. We had one room and one kitchen. So in the corner of the house, I was 4 years old, my other two younger brothers weren't born, and only one of them was born. But I go to the corner of the room and I see this drum not covered, like he must have left it open. So I grab it and I'm like, you're imagining me tiny, 4-year-old, you know. Sure. And I start playing with my hand and I start playing rhythms. And my mom thinks that this guy is not like abusing it, he's really playing it, so let him play. And I was practicing playing whatever I thought I could play. My dad comes home and my mom says that, hey, I think he's playing your drum and I think it's okay. So my dad says, okay. So I played a little bit for him, but then I opened up more and he said, okay, let me sing then. So he started singing and I started playing the song. He would change the song and I would still know what to do. So that's when he said, wow, this is great. Not only I have a son who can play a little bit drum, but if I work with him more, I have an accompanist in the house, so I don't have to sing anymore, right? So my first drum, my first love was this drum, Dholak.
Dholak.
Now Dholak, I tuned it up before I came here, and then I was in the performance. As soon as I hit it a few times, it went down, right? Yeah. You heard it, right? The big slap here. I think it's a little bit of that moisture and weather changing. This one ringing just a little bit louder. But typically, when I'll show you some videos of other master Dholak players that that sound, even in the video, you'll see a very phenomenal master playing, but it's not more louder than that. So, Dholak is a folkloric drum. It's played in this particular version of Dholak. It's played in where I come from, Gujarat. It's played in Gujarat a lot. Typically from here we will start understanding all these drums. Typically in Indian drums, one is a low side and one is a high side. That happens in other cultures as well. Two conga drums, one is considered lower, one is higher. But sometimes the low and high in the pitch is not as wide spectrum as Indian drums. So bata drums from Cuba, I play them, I have a bunch of them at home, I studied the tradition of it with other masters. But between the low and the high of the bata itself, the range of how low it is and how high it is a little bit narrower. In Indian drums, it gets really wide, especially by the time we go to tabla. So the Dholak has, the low side has, if you can see this discoloration, that's not the discoloration of the skin. Inside on the other side is, and even on this one, it's the other side is this extra material attached to the head. So I'll talk about this when you come to the tabla, but that is called shahi or masala. Masala literally means spices. If you go to Indian cuisine, if you know the word masala is spices. Well, here it's not in terms of spices, but it's masala in terms of a lump of spices put together to make the drum sing. So technical real name is called shahi, and shahi is the black dot over there on tabla. In here it's inside. So that gives it a more lower frequency. So now this Dholak drum in the barrel shape, two-sided, sideways plate, has been around in India for as long as 2,000-3,000 years, as long as the drums have been around. There is a version of this kind of barrel shape sideway version called Pakhavaj. Pakhavaj is at least 2,500 years old because there are cave paintings with Pakhavaj, big Pakhavaj, and people playing, even carvings in the cave with people playing Pakhavaj drum. So we know they've been around. This Dholak folkloric drum connects with these two drums that are called Naggara drums. Now Naggara drums have same thing, low and high. And these sometimes are played with hands, just like I played in the beginning of my performance with fingers. And you get the pitch bend here by doing, or you can go keep pressing with the wrist. And then, so high Naggara drum, low Naggara drum. These two drums are also found in all kinds of sizes. So this you have to think like the Dholaks are usually this size, maybe just a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit. This is more pretty much full size Dholak. A smaller one can be found a little bit bigger, but if it gets really big and a bigger head, then it's a Pakhawas drum. It's a different drum. Nagaras, this is like portable, regular, standard size. Same thing, this big would be in a big temple somewhere, but only low one. Because the high ones, these ones, people bring from their home. And there is a master drummer playing with big low Naggara, and other people will be playing these drums in their like laps or hanging on them. So in a community sense, there are other people playing together, but you can play these instruments like this. Whenever they are played together, it's called Naggara Jodi, literally means a pair. So Naggara Jodi is very popular in North India. Any time people used to have weddings, processions, they would bring these drums, put them at the gate of an event wherever is happening, and they would play them. So they call the drummers. So let's say my friend, I just got to know him, my friend Jack. Let's say Jack has his uncle is getting married. He'll call me and say, hey, we need some Nagaras at our gate, like where we live, by my house. So I go to his house, uncle's house. I don't enter the house. I sit right outside his house and start playing this. That way everybody in the village knows that somebody in this house is getting married. So these are announcement drums, party drums, but more like announcements and letting people know communication. These drums were also used in battles because you could put one on a cloth bag on the side of a horse, left and right, and play, and you can play battle calls on these drums. So these are very, very multi-purpose drums in India. So when I was playing them, some of these are dance rhythms that I was playing. I also played a 7/4 time signature here when I was playing. So I was playing. So that particular rhythm comes from certain parts of North India, and then it sort of changes from different places to different places. But that's 7/4. There is warriors footwork dance from where I come from in Gujarat, and they dance to that 7/4, and they do the workout, the footwork. And the reason I found that a lot of times, even in Bulgarian culture and other places that are not even near India, they have odd time signatures for dances because in all the war steps and studying the footwork, odd time is better because then you can turn around at that uneven, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, turn again. So that way you cover each side. If you keep fighting in 8 or 4 or 12, you're going to keep fighting the same direction and not cover everything. So if I'm doing the footwork, so the drums, some of these Indian drums, they relate to a lot of cultural folk dancing. So Dholak relates to folk dancing. This relates to folk dancing. So I played transition from here to here because of the similarity of the sound. I played this with hands and I played Naggara with my sticks. Then I played Tabla. The reason I played Tabla, even though this Dhol was my next instrument in my life, before I got tabla lessons. I played this because there was a transition from those two drums to these two drums here. So we'll talk in detail about tabla. These are the most popular Indian drums, and the reason they are the most popular is because they are youngest. They only came about 400 years ago, and they got more popular 300 years ago, and more popular even 200 years ago. So that way, they are the younger drums. These Naggaras are depicted in cave paintings and carvings. The Dhol drum, so before I have printouts to hand out to you and talk about tabla a little bit more in detail. So we will come back to tabla, but as far as when I was 7, then I started getting tabla lessons, and that has the language of speaking the syllables that I'll explain to you more. Let me cover the Dhol drum next. So this is also another folkloric drum. Again, played with hands or sticks. When I was playing the rhythms here, I played more North Indian Gujarati and North Indian Rajasthan, middle India rhythms. There is also Punjab, which is much more north by New Delhi, and the Dhol over there is their primary instrument. So Dhol is all over North India. I think if you take Midwest, let's say around altogether about, I want to say 800 to 900 miles, both like wide and 1,000 miles this way, 1,000 miles this way. This drum is played in a large, and then depending upon where you are in India, if you are in North India, you will see Dhol players playing bigger Dhols, a little bit bigger, or it could be a little bit smaller. And from there, I came here, I picked up a frame drum. This is called Duff. It has some jingles. I think one of them fell off, which I have to fix with the crazy glue. But this one is again very popular North Indian drum, played with hands. Once in a while played with a smaller stick, like on one side, like this. I'll go to rest. I didn't demo it that way, but I did play with another drum, Chanda. So this frame drum, I do have to make that sound for you. It's so beautiful. And you go to a studio and you do this. So, Duff drum is a drum for caravan. Light, easy to carry. Riding somewhere with a bunch of camels, bunch of horses, bunch of people walking. One or two guys can carry this. It's very light, like this. So, Duff drum also is sometimes played like this. Put it away, and then this is a very high-pitched drum called Chanda. C-H-A-N-D-A, Chanda. Now, I got the Chanda, that is North Indian Chanda. On our YouTube video, we're going to see lots of South Indian musicians playing Chanda, but they share the name Chanda, but it's a completely different drum, big drum that's hanging, they're playing with 2 sticks. But they share the name, they also share the playing technique and the high-pitched sound. And the high-pitched sound of this drum, Chanda, is really for street, outdoor. So a lot of these drums, Chanda, that Dhol, those are what I call field drums. It's better to have them played outside. And maybe 5, 10, 15 people play all together. So these are loud and outdoors drums. So now, the Chanda drum, one thing that is interesting is that almost everything, if you notice, I didn't play it like this. Everything is stick. The sticks stay close to the drum. So you lift it only when you need it, otherwise it's always there. Most drums in the world, I play drum set, I play other drums, it's like this. You go away from it, but Chanda, you stay with it. So what happens with the Chanda, because there's a way to continuously trigger their high frequency by constantly keeping it ringing, it creates this super fast, everything that's played on Chanda is super fast and super buzzy, like a kind of thing, you know. So now Chanda can be added when somebody is playing Naggara, then you got 3. So sometimes modern India drummers mix the drums up together and play. The other drum that I played when I came here, this is also a very ancient shape of the drum, and it's played 2 ways. One is that you pull on the string, then bend the pitch a little bit, and then these 2 dangling strings with the little ball here, they make the pitch bend is done by me pushing here, and then it also played this way, the talking drum way. This is called Damru, and almost all the depiction of Lord Shiva, the Indian deity, Indian god, he is holding this either in one of his hands. He has 8 hands or 4 hands sometimes, and so out of his 4 hands he's holding this drum, or sometimes it's just behind him in the picture. So if you see this drum, it's called Damru, and it's considered the oldest Indian drum mythologically. We don't know if it's true or not, but it's more mythological connection to this drum. Now, we'll talk about these 2 drums, and then I'll give you the handout. We'll look at some videos. So I got this South Indian drum called Manjeera. Before I play the Manjeera, what I have to do is take a little bit of water, I'll moist my hand a little bit. And just sprinkle it. I play it now. It's pretty high pitch, right? Then I put a little water in it. Little moisture. And it'll lose the tension. Take another second. So while I'm getting the right pitch for it, this is the monitored lizard skin. So the monitored lizard skin, or some people like to call, say, Komodo dragon. So in India there is about this long, 2-3 feet long, thin, long Komodo dragons, or monitor lizard. They can get fat up to maybe this much, and they are in the rice paddies. And a lot of these monitor lizards, in the rice paddies, they eat the rats that are going to ruin your rice crop. So the rice farmers would have this monitor lizard with their tails tied to a string and let them go at night, and they go and eat all the rats, and then in the morning they pull all of them back. So there is a symbiotic relationship between the monitor lizards and human beings, and saving the rice paddies. And so when these monitor lizards die, then they make this drum from the skin. So now it went down in the pitch, and I can bring it down even more. But then, like it happens in the human beings, we start abusing our relationship with the animals or the whatever. So people started killing more and more monitor lizards to make drums like that. So currently Indian government has banned this drum. So if I go back to India, which I always, every year or two I go to India visit, I cannot take it back because it'll get confiscated at the airport. They'll take it away from me and I cannot go there. When I come back from India, I cannot bring these drums in a flight. So, this is called Manjeera. Manjeera, the way to recognize Manjeera is there are only one set of jingles. All over the world, tambourine tradition, a small tambourine with jingle is all over the world. In Italy, there is tambourine tradition. There is Brazil, pandero. There is Rik and Muzar in Arabia, or Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, name a country and they have a tambourine tradition. But in India, in the tambourine tradition, there is only one set of jingle in Manjeera. So now this is really low. So basically this is the pitch bend drum. And then this too has the Indian vocalization of rhythms connection to it. So when I was playing this drum, I also did dim, tak, dim, dim, tak, dim, 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 ta, dim, dim, tak, dim, dim. So, I have a Western version of it because the monitor lizard skin is hard to come by. So this is made of cloth, but it's the same idea as Manjeera with a single set of jingles. So I think just to show you that these drums and everything we're talking about is not just, before we get into Tabla, let's look at some YouTube videos that I prepared a master list. You won't see the all videos completely, I'll skip them around, but just so that you get to see a master drummer playing any of these drums, especially I'll find a Dhol player, I found a couple of people, so I think it's cool to see that. And I think we are ready set up with that. Okay, how about I show you, before we get into Tabla, so how about I show you Dhol players. Oh, we have to sit through the ads on YouTube, of course.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon and never miss an update.
This is the power drum. That's bigger than this, the one that I don't have here. It's a phenomenal power player. His name is Bhavani Shankar. I've made a lot of recordings with him and I've performed with him a lot. But when I was performing with him in Bombay music scene, I was playing drums and he was playing Just remember this point where I stopped. He's singing the vocalization of Pakawaj sounds and then he's playing along with it. We'll connect that with how it works in Tabla. I'm going to move to a Dholak player. I'll play this for you. That's the same bass drum. This is in somebody's house, they're jamming on a dollar. It's fun to see that, right? So,
There's no moves like Keon's. There's no chips like
1, 2, 3, 4.
she's great, right? Both of them. So that's up to Dholak. Oh, and then I want to play another South Indian drum that I didn't bring. These are all North Indian drums. I'm going to play a video of South Indian Mridanga, which is sort of like a Pakawaj, but it's not. It's a different drum. And there's another woman master that I like to listen to. She's playing it here.
Namaste all.
All right, so we'll stop these videos for now. And so far, any questions about all these drums? Before we move to Tabla and everything, I give you a handout.
You said the Dholak was your first drum. Is this your first Dholak?
No, this is not. But it's pretty close. It's pretty beat up. How about this? I say, when I came to America, I could only bring one set of tabla with me. When I came on a full scholarship to study jazz music in America to Chicago Musical College, Roosevelt University. Now it has changed the name. It's called CCP or something, right? But it used to be called Chicago Musical College, same college that Jack goes to. So when I came here as a foreign student on a scholarship, I brought myself one pair of tabla, and then I was studying jazz drum set. When I first time went back to India in 1993, after being here for 1 or 2 years, and I was bringing a drum back, I got a special dholak made. So this is my first dholak that I brought in America. So I have 4 other dholaks at home, but I still love this one because it sounds great. And so But I have my childhood dholak is a little bit smaller because it was my dad's drum, and I think it was not high quality wood because I don't think my dad could afford a really fancy one. So I think at some point, about 10 or 15 years ago, we had to get rid of it. It was just dilapidated, it was ruined, everything was gone. This is the good wooden shell I invested in. So now this one, I can just change the heads and it'll last me forever. Any other question? For any of these drums? We're going to get into tabla now.
I noticed there's a lot of different techniques that you
They
need
do
to
change, yes.
master.
Some people think that once you know tabla, you can play all of this, but no, it's actually each one, the techniques change, the sound, and also the repertoire that you would play on each sort of changes. So it has the DNA of Indian music and DNA of the Indian sound, but I have to practice or learn how to hit them.
Sure.
Like if I just have a friend who plays a lot of tabla, may not be able to play these Naggara drums. So I started by going to masters where I started studying these drums when I was young. Dhol drum, I started playing when I was 6 or 7, smaller one, but I started playing because in community dances, I would be in demand to play that drum and then I get a free dinner. So that's how I started playing. Yeah, so they do need different technique and playing stuff. Any other question? We can ask later too. So let's get into a little bit of tabla. How about that? So I already played some tabla for you. So what I have, the single page I have here is what I'm going to start with. It says left hand, baya sound, okay? So tabla drums. The word tabla, T-A-B-L-A. You guys know any word like that?
Table.
Exactly. Thank you. It's same word. In Arabic, tabla, T-A-B-L, is anything with a flat surface. So why are these table? Because they look like table as opposed to this drum. So this drum is not a table unless I do this. So this is a dholak drum. What happened was that why does Indian drum have an Arabic name? Interesting question. Why am I asking this question? Because I have an answer for it. So this tabla drums have all the DNA of these kind of Naggara drums from India. It has DNA of spoken rhythms of Bhagavad when the Bhavani Shankar, when Bhagavad, he was saying, Takka, he was saying, what was he saying? He was saying a very famous pattern. Ding, ding, takata, takata, genataka, genataka, one of those. When he was saying it and speaking it sideways drum, the repertoire of spoken rhythms was already established by the time tabla came to India. But there is Arabic or Turkish drum, dumbek, darbuk, those thin sounding drums, smaller heads, came with Turkish and other cultural connections. So now, a lot of, by 11th century, 12th century, 13th century onwards in India, we see Turkish people come, we see Arabian influence, but there was no today's Arabia. It was more Persia, Turkey. Later on, the Mongols came, and then another type of group of people, tribes of people came beyond from Afghanistan. So when that started happening, along with the war and craziness of turmoil in north of India, cultural action would also happen while all this war and invaders come and whatever happens, right? So these Turkish drums made it to India, and there was an influence of culture between Turkish and Persian musicians in New Delhi, or I call it New Delhi, the old Delhi, Delhi is the North Indian capital. So around that region in North India, lot of poetry, songs, music, instruments, everything started meeting each other. So around that time, keeping the sustain, look how sustain this drum is. That long, right? Keeping the sustain of the drum in this drum, but with more lower. So that's keeping that low here, and the high pitch Turkish drums that we used to talk about, the buka, dumbek. I mean, this is the highest pitch in any of this. Right? That's the highest. Also, it's in tune for longer. It's pretty close to D right now. I tuned to D, but it might have dropped just a little bit. So that influence of Turkish and other drums, the reason for tablas to come about 300 or 400 years ago in North India is that they were looking for the high-pitched sound of Islamic, Turkish, other drums to cut through the sarod and sitar, and sarod came later, but sitar and other thin-sounding instruments, and also they became court instruments as opposed to folkloric. So they, in the court tradition, but all of a sudden tabla comes about in India, in Delhi, around that region, but the spoken tradition of Pakhawash for another 2,000 years old got transferred into this. So tabla benefited from having a pre-established language transferred to the new drum. So we will go through the vocabulary list of the tabla sounds. So my left hand is on my low drum here. So first is ga, and just like a language you can say ga, ga, ge, gi. So ga, ga, ge, gi. Then with a little slide, ga, ga, ge, gi. So if I just let the fundamental ring, ga, ga, ge, gi. But if I have to little press with my wrist, then ka is a ka, and then depending upon what sounds you are making, ka, ka, ge, gi. Now right hand gets very interesting. On the right hand, first sound is called na or ta. That's the first sound, na, and all tabla players, we always have to sing the sound before we play. So when I was 7 years old, my dad took me, young man, how old are you? How old are you? How old are you? How old are you? 7, 10, 4?
8.
Huh? 6?
8.
8. He's older than when I was 7 years old, but I looked like him. I was like that small. I go to my tabla teacher. I sit down and I'm so excited. I'm going to study tabla with him today. And my teacher, sit down. So I sat down. My teacher looked like this. He's about to play the drum. He put his hand on it. So I put my hands on it like, all right, ready to play. I look at him. He looks at me. I thought we're going to play. You know, I was playing dholak already. I was telling you that I was a drummer. Well, my teacher says, na ke tita. I'm looking at him. What's he talking about? Then na ke tita. And I figured it out. Oh, he's telling me to speak. So I say in my baby voice, na ke tita. He keeps making me sing all these tabla sounds. And I'm not playing the drums yet. And I'm looking at my dad like, is this why we came here? You know, I'm not getting to play the drums. Well, he kept speaking and speaking and speaking. And I had to repeat and repeat and repeat after him. And then maybe we played one sound. Na, na. And he said, okay, go home, come tomorrow. Like, what? Going back on a bicycle, my dad said, look, we have to trust our teacher. He knows what he's doing. You got to go again tomorrow. Well, it wasn't exactly the next day, but 3 times a week I used to go to him. So we skipped a day. Again I go to my teacher. Again we sit down. Again he makes me speak all the rhythms. Maybe we play 4 times. Na, na, something. This kept going on and on and on. After about 10 weeks, I realized that now I can speak a lot of Tabla language before I can actually play. So by the time I really learned to play the sounds, my brain was ahead of the language learning. Isn't it how it is for us when we are young, when we learn the language, we just speak. Mom, give me milk. We don't know how it looks on the paper, right? If you're Hispanic, then you learn to say the same stuff, you know. And you don't know how it's written out. So like that, in Tabla, for me, how it's mathematically divided or how it is later on, I had to figure all that out later. But the sounds on the drums are this. Na is the first sound. Tin. So there's a difference between na and tin. In the na, you'll hear a little word. So those are na, Daniel. Here. And now tin. You don't hear the wood underneath, right? That's why we put the microphone. You hear there's a wood here, and there's no wood here. Tin, T, second finger shahi, close sound. That's the third one. When I say close means that sound, open means ringing sound. So na is an open sound. Titte, din, tha or ra, and then din, tun, first finger. Basic mixed sound from above. Right hand titte, tinna, natun, natin. So I played, again I'm going to go to mixed sound. The first one is called titte, tinna, natun, natin. Now I have to use the left hand. Ga and na together, ga and na together is da. So I give you spelling there, da. Ga and tin together is din. Dat is ga and tin together, dat. So da, din, dat. Da, din, dat. And then now duple sound, the last 3 lines, duple sound. Dage, dinna, dati, gena, natun, tunna, kena, nake, triple, takena, takena, dhagena, titteda, dhati ge, genati, kattadha. Those are triples. Quadruple. Tirrakitta. Nati gena. Gena nake. Nake tinna. Dinna gena. So far so good. We finished the page, yeah? Okay, so now we have to quadruple sound. But what about Jack's already ahead of this, man? He's a smart musician. He's already thinking that, Kalyan, what if you play 2 quadruple sounds and 1 triple sound? What would it sound like? So I'll pick the first 2 quadruple sounds. Tira kitta dhati gena, I'll play that twice. Tira kitta dhati gena, tira kitta dhati gena, and then I'll play triple sound. Takena, takena, dhagena, dhagena, twice, 2 times. So tira kitta dhati gena, tira kitta dhati gena, takena, takena, dhagena, dhagena. So far so good? So this is Jack's composition. He just telepathically told me to play this. I know this. He's already thinking ahead. That why don't we just make a longer sentence? So and oh, it sounds like a good combination. show you that you can go, once you know the phrase, you can go with it. How about another phrase? Yes.
That's a question. You mentioned for all the other drums, the language had preceded it, but for the, or the language I guess came after, but the tabla, the language was already formed.
Well, so absolutely correct. So I did say that the Pakhavach language, the language of making low sound and loud sound and then creating, that concept was already there. Some of these, now that I'm presenting tabla specific to tabla sound, let's go back to that what she's saying. So let's say I'm just going to play this drum, and on this drum there's 3 or 4 sounds: ta, ke, ta, ta, ke, ta, ding. So I'm playing ding, ta, 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 ding, ta, ke, ding, da. So with that, with just ta, ding, taka, tita, kita, it's about 8 or 9 sounds. The complexity in the rhythm, because rhythm is time is going this way, you can make very complex rhythms. Let's say I play 10-beat cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So far everything is in 5/4 or 10/4, and I'm playing those sounds, speaking my rhythms. But that complexity, with the tabla having 18 sounds, and the newer instrument, that's why it became very popular, because now the facility you could have the old language transfer, so you have so many more sounds, and then pitch bend. You know, so with the pitch bend possibilities, and so then what happens in tabla is that it has, I gave you all the simple ones. Altogether in tabla for the master level, we play about 18 sounds, single. When you put them together, they become words. Words become, let's ask these guys. Hey, when you have a bunch of words, when you put them together, what happens? What it is? A sentence, right?
Yeah.
When you have a couple of sentences that make sense together, what is it? A paragraph. And when you have a couple of paragraphs, you can't see me smiling because of the math, but relax with me, okay? So, a couple of paragraphs together, then you have a couple of paragraphs together that make sense. What is it? Huh? Story. So, put words together, make a sentence. Put sentences together, make a paragraph. Make a paragraph, couple of paragraphs together, it's a story. So now we're going to talk about tabla story, and we can look at this thing. First 2 paragraphs you can read at home later to save some time. I got only 10 minutes, I still want to show you some master videos. So let's see Tala or Talam, okay? Tala is to clap or show pulse or be one with ongoing pulse. This ancient Sanskrit word, it refers to time, beats, meters, grouping. So that's the whole paragraph about Tala. Why don't we skip to this place? For at the bottom it says 4 essential Tala and rhythmic cycle in organic music. Why don't we look at that? Okay? The 4 essentials. First one, Tala must have fixed number of beats more than 1. So if I'm playing Tala, literally means rhythmic cycle. And if I'm playing a rhythmic cycle, my first rule that I'm giving you, it must have a fixed number of beats more than 1. Tala is the beats of Tali or Khali, which means like Tali, or if I do a wave. So let's say I have 8 beats. We're going to clap on 1. Is that okay, Jack? Okay. How about I need a wave? What beat do you want me to wave on? Out of 8. 1 is taken. Give me a number.
4.
One, huh?
4.
4 is wave. Okay, let's play this Tala called Jack Daniel Tala, okay? 8 beats, clap on 1, wave 1, 3. Ready? Not very fast. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3. 4 we are going, huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. Now we are getting somewhere. This is a cycle. But then, last one. Tala has bold patterns. Syllables assigned corresponding to Tali and Kali. Since I'm the only one who studied Tabla, I'll make up a pattern with this clapping and wave. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Da din titta ta tira kitta da din titta. Those are the first 3 beats. Everybody saying da din titta. 1, 2, go.
Da din titta.
That's 3 beats. Then ta titta tira kitta. Ta titta tira kitta. Those are the 5 beats. 1, 2, ready, go.
Ta titta titta.
And put that together. Da din titta tira kitta. Da din titta tira kitta. Beautiful. So now, the last condition. Next page. It's on the next page. With above conditions in place, now the Tala gets a proper name, such as the Vishnu Tala, Ek Tala, etc. We already gave a name. Jack Daniel Tala. We already have a name. Okay? Now, that was our class Tala. Let me present to you a very famous, popular Tala. Oh, then let's finish this the discussion on the second page. Tukda, a piece of pada. Usually rhythmic compositions that percussionists can play. So I'm going to play a tukda for you. Okay? That's just a piece of phrase. Okay? Then, paran, composition, rhythms in ancient Pakhavaj, drum studies. Ding, ding, tak, tak, tak. So these are composition. I'm going to sing it first and I'm going to play it. Ding, ding, tak, 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 so that's sort of like a paran kind of value to it. Next is kaida. Musically, kaidas are compositions of complex stroke groupings resulting in an exposition close to theme and variation for tabla solo. So this is one kaida. Now I improvise on it. And then last is rela. Flow, stream, speed, develop, roll. So these are the compositions for speed and roll. This is the rela. I can sing it too. So relas are the roll compositions. Kaidas are the theme and variation compositions. Parans are the compositions that have traditionally, they could be for dancing. Some parans are for dancing, some parans are for just for tabla or pakhavaj. And then tukda or short phrases are the phrases that people know. So if I go to another tabla player and say, hey man, we're going to play then they would know already, oh yeah, I know that one, let's play. So, the language of tabla. So now let's look at a very famous tabla player, my I know him very well. He's one of the most humble guys, phenomenal tabla player of the world, Zakir Hussain. If you're going to ever look at one tabla player's YouTube video, go and see Zakir Hussain. I'm going to play Zakir Hussain's tabla video and then another tabla maestro too. Forward in the room. Oh.
Download the Domino's app today and become a piece of the My Rewards member to earn points toward free pizza.
An Invisalign smile is so powerful, you can face anything. Invis is 10 million smiles strong. Invisalign.
Now he'll speak the paran or an older composition and he'll rolling composition. So he's playing, of course, at the breakneck speed and he's improvising, but the rela he's playing is so that's technique is involved. Lot more complex, pretty much the master level speed. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's one of the best tabla players. So another great tabla maestro that I like to show. I'll show you one more of his. Showing drums too much. The cameraman is. There you So, those are the paran bowls, are one of the words that we learned here. So right now he's doing a paran composition that I can pick up and study, or like I can say, oh yeah, that's what he's doing, you know. Like that. So that I just wanted to get you guys going on what tabla is, what paran can be, what. So this vocabulary list, you can take it home with you. And I want to show you one more amazing tabla maestro also, so just so that it's not all about only so this tabla maestro, after the ad, his name is Swapan Chaudhary. He's tabla teacher at the Aliyah Institute of Music. I want to show you that tabla is not just solo instrument, it's mostly accompaniment instrument with other people. So when he was playing with Bansuri player, I have an older tabla player, Vishal Mule. He's playing Narayan Mule. He's playing with the famous singer Bhimsen Joshi. It's a clip from the 70s. And I found it on YouTube and it's pretty amazing. So. I opened my tabla presentation today with this Tala, and I sat down here and I sang. It's a very ancient 12-beat Tala. Din din dadra din na kat din dadra din na 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. So very fast 12. 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. Din din dadra din na kat din dadra din na. And I have to do this for hours, or at least half an hour, 1 hour till the singer is done singing. You know, they keep singing. So this is like, you know, that's like straight ahead jazz, you know. And what I like about the syncopation here is every time I'm playing now, it's actually 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. It's on the offbeat. Cycle, and that's what they're playing now. Let's just get a little bit taste of that and we'll open up for question and answer. I made it a public so anybody can see my MasterClass playlist. I'll share it with you, and if anybody interested, you can share it with them. So as far as on these 2 pages, there's a lot more written out. A lot of times I give a lot more material for people to read, but we cover all of that without actual going into the first 2 paragraphs. So if you still have any questions, let me know. Let's talk about any of these shows. We still have a few more time, but as far as what I prepared and what I wanted to bring to you, that's my world here.
Thank you.
Thank you.